Hey there. Come closer to the fire for a little while. Tonight, begin with something small enough to fit in your hand. A stone. Not a sword. Not a crown. Not a golden mask found in a royal tomb. Just a stone, cool against the skin, rough at the edge, heavier than it looks. If you turn it slowly in your palm, you can feel how quiet it is. A thing with no voice, no memory of its own, no wish to become important. And yet, long before cities, long before writing, long before metal ever flashed in a human hand, someone looked at a stone like that and imagined it could become something more. That is where this story begins. Not with a king, not with a battle, not with a temple sinking into sand. It begins with a hand choosing a rock, lifting another rock, and striking one against the other until a sharp edge appeared. A small edge, a dangerous edge, a useful edge, the kind of edge that could cut hide, open bone, scrape wood, and change the fate of a hungry creature standing under a wide African sky. If that quiet thought already pulls you in, leave a gentle like and subscribe. It helps more night wanderers find these old human stories by the fire. Now, let the room settle. Let the light soften. Let the sound of the present become a little smaller. We are going back so far that ordinary history becomes almost invisible. Most of what people call ancient is not truly ancient beside this. Rome is young here. Egypt is young. Babylon is young. The pyramids are recent. The first kings, the first armies, the first coins, the first ships with sails, all of them belong near the surface of time. They are like footprints in damp sand after a long, dark ocean has already moved for millions of years. The Stone Age is that ocean. It was not a brief beginning. It was almost the whole human story. For millions of years, our ancestors lived with stone, wood, bone, fire, skin, memory, and each other. They had no bronze, no iron, no written law, no maps folded into pockets, no clocks, no names carved into marble for strangers to read later. And still, they survived. More than that, they became us. That is the strange and humbling truth. The mind that listens to this story, the hand that can hold a cup, the eyes that notice patterns in firelight, the nervous little habit of looking toward a sudden sound in the dark. All of it was shaped during those immense stretches of time when survival depended on attention. A crack in a stone mattered. A track in mud mattered. A change in wind mattered. The cry of birds, the smell of rain, the behavior of animals before nightfall, the memory of where water had been last season. These were not background details. They were the thin line between life and disappearance. Honestly, I have always found it strange how quickly we skip over this part of ourselves. We spend so much time with emperors and castles, with wars that lasted a few years, with kingdoms that rose and fell in a few centuries. But the people who made us possible lived across a scale of time so huge that the mind almost refuses to hold it. Millions of years, thousands of generations before farming, Countless nights before anyone wrote a name. And through all those nights, stone remained near the hand. Picture one of those nights. The sky is darker than any city sky you have ever seen. There is no glow at the horizon. No window light. No road. No distant tower. Only stars, sharp and crowded, pressing down over open land. A small group gathers near a fire. The flames are not yet ordinary to them, not in the way a lamp is ordinary to us. Fire is still half miracle, half animal. It moves. It eats. It gives warmth. It frightens the eyes in the grass beyond the circle. Someone sits at the edge of that light with a stone core between their knees. The body leans forward. The shoulders are still. One hand turns the core. The other hand holds a hammerstone. There is a pause, because the strike must land in the right place. Then comes the sound. Stone against stone. A clean crack in the night. A flake breaks away. The edge glints for a moment in firelight. No one applauds. No one says history has changed. No one names it technology. The toolmaker may only feel satisfaction, or relief, or hunger sharpened into action. Maybe they are thinking of meat, maybe of a child, maybe of a carcass found near the grass, still holding marrow inside bone. Maybe they are not thinking in words as we would know them. We cannot know. But something is happening. The world is no longer only found. It is being shaped. This is the deep beginning of the Stone Age, and it is not tidy. It does not start with a date written neatly on a wall. It emerges slowly, like dawn through dust. Some of the oldest known stone tools come from East Africa, from a place near Lake Turkana in Kenya, around 3.3 million years ago. That number is so large it almost turns into weather. 3.3 million years. Say it softly, and it still feels unreal. These tools are often called the Lomekwi tools, after the place where they were found. They are heavy, crude, and old beyond comfort. They do not look elegant like later blades. They look like beginnings usually look. Rough, stubborn, practical, a little awkward, and yet they carry a startling message. They are older than our genus, older than Homo. That means the first known toolmakers were probably not human in the way we usually use the word. They may have been Australopithecines or another human relative living in East Africa at the time. We cannot be certain. The makers did not sign their work, and bones do not always lie conveniently beside stones for our benefit. Archaeology can be rude like that. It gives us enough to wonder, then refuses to answer every question. Still, the evidence is powerful. Something with ape-like features and free hands was striking stones together with intention. Not modern humans. Not even Homo erectus. Not yet. Something earlier. Something standing near the edge of becoming. Imagine that creature under the East African sun. Shorter than us. Strong in different ways. Arms longer. Face more projecting. Brain much smaller than ours. Not a philosopher with a schedule. Not a cartoon caveman either. a living being in a dangerous landscape. Alert, hungry, social, watching everything. The world around it was changing. Forests were breaking apart. Old green shelter was thinning into scattered patches. Grasslands opened wider and wider, and with the grass came opportunity, but also exposure. In the trees, an ape can vanish among branches. On open ground, the body becomes visible. Predators can see you. Cats, hyenas, wild dogs. Ancient hunters with patience in their bones. But open land also gives gifts. Herds move across it. Grazing animals leave trails. Predators make kills, and after they feed, they leave remains behind. Meat clinging under hide. Bone holding marrow. Skulls guarding rich tissue within. To most animals, these leftovers are difficult. Thick skin resists teeth. Bone protects what is inside. But a stone edge can open what a jaw cannot. This may be where hunger became invention. Not a grand awakening beneath the stars. Not a speech from destiny. Just need. The old and faithful teacher. Hunger says, try again. Hunger says, hit the stone differently. Hunger says, remember the edge that worked. And memory is where the miracle deepens. A single lucky break is not culture. One accidental sharp stone does not make a tradition. The important thing is repetition. Someone had to remember. Someone had to try again. Someone had to choose a stone that would fracture well. Someone had to learn that angle mattered, that force mattered, that not every rock was useful, no matter how confidently it sat there pretending to be. Then someone younger had to watch. A child, perhaps, crouched nearby in dust, eyes fixed on the hand. The older one strikes. A flake falls. The child reaches too soon and is stopped. Careful. Sharp. Maybe there were no words like that yet. Maybe there was only a sound, a gesture, a warning touch. But teaching does not begin with grammar. It begins when one mind helps another avoid pain and repeat success. That is the beginning of inheritance. Not gold, not land, not a family name. A method. Hold it this way. Strike there. Not too hard. Watch the edge. Across generations, such small lessons become enormous. They become survival stored outside the body. A tool is not only a tool. It is memory made solid. It is an idea you can carry. Let that thought rest for a moment. An idea you can carry. This is what stone gave our ancestors. A way to bring possibility with them. A sharp edge before the carcass is found. A hammerstone before the bone is cracked. A plan before the need becomes desperate. In that quiet shift, the mind stretches forward in time. Later, around 2.6 million years ago, another tool tradition appears, known as Oldovan. These tools were still simple compared with later stone blades, but they show something more systematic. A core selected. A hammerstone used. Flakes struck away with purpose, edges made for cutting, scraping, chopping, opening. The name comes from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, though ever similar tools spread much farther. The sound of their making would have traveled across many landscapes. Tap, crack, turn, strike, lift the flake, test the edge, try again. It sounds simple until you try to do it. Stone has moods. It breaks well or badly. It hides its weaknesses. Strike too softly and nothing happens. Strike too hard and the core shatters like a bad plan. Strike at the wrong angle and the flake refuses to form. A good toolmaker needed touch, patience, memory, and a kind of quiet conversation with the material. This was not brute force. This was skill. With these tools, early humans and their relatives could reach food that had once been locked away. They could cut meat faster before larger predators returned. They could open bones for marrow, that rich treasure of fat and calories. They could process plants, deck roots, scrape hides, shape wood, and extend the reach of the body beyond tooth and nail. That matters because brains are hungry things. Your brain is expensive. It uses a huge amount of energy for its size. A larger brain needs reliable food, especially calorie-dense food. Stone tools helped provide that. Better food supported healthier bodies. Healthier bodies supported more surviving children. More learning, more teaching, more memory. A slow loop began to turn. Stone-shaped diet. Diet shaped bodies. Bodies shaped minds. Minds shaped better tools. It was not quick. Nothing in deep time is quick. It was slow, uneven, fragile, always threatened by drought, injury, predators, and chance. But across thousands of generations, the changes gathered. And something else gathered, too. Cooperation. A toolmaker focused on stone is not watching the grass. A person cutting meat at a carcass is vulnerable. A group near a kill site needs eyes in many directions. Someone watches while someone cuts. Someone carries while someone guards. Someone shares because tomorrow they may need to be shared with. This is not civilization yet. Not even close. But it is the root of something civilization later depends on. Trust. Not perfect trust. Not sentimental trust. Stone Age trust. Practical. Watchful. Earned beside danger. The kind that says, I will look toward the grass while you work. The kind that says, this meat is too much for one body, so we carry it back. The kind that says, the child must learn the edge before hunger comes again. In the firelit room where you are listening now, it may feel distant, but it is not as distant as it seems. Every time a skill passes from one person to another, every time someone watches carefully and copies, every time food is shared, every time a group survives because no one stands alone, that old Stone Age pattern is still moving. We are not separate from those hands. We are their continuation. The first part of the Stone Age is dark because survival was never guaranteed. A broken tooth could matter. A drought could scatter the animals. A predator in the wrong place could end a life before sunset. But it is also beautiful, because against all of that, a small creature with free hands learned to make an edge. A rock became a tool. A tool became memory. Memory became culture. And far ahead, beyond millions of nights no one wrote down, that culture would become us. The first tool makers did not know they were standing at the beginning of a human epic. They were simply alive, which was already difficult enough. East Africa, in those ancient ages, was not a gentle cradle. It was a shifting world of broken forest, widening grassland, lakes that rose and shrank, seasons that could feed one generation and starve the next. The landscape did not explain itself. It changed, and every living thing had to answer. Some answered by retreating into the last thick forests. Some followed old habits until the old habitats failed. Some vanished. But a few populations stayed near the edges, where trees met open land, where danger and opportunity shared the same shadow. That edge world mattered. It gave shelter, fruit, roots, insects, small animals, carcass, stones, water, and a constant lesson in uncertainty. Uncertainty is a harsh teacher. It does not let the lazy mind sleep for long. Picture the shore of an ancient lake near where Lake Turkana lies today. The air is warm. Mud holds the prints of animals. Reeds stand in shallow water. Birds lift suddenly, startled by something beyond our view. In the distance, grass moves, and no one can be sure whether it is wind or a predator. Near the water, a small group of bipedal creatures moves carefully. They are not humans yet. Not in the full, later sense. Their bodies still remember trees. Their arms are long. Their faces are not ours. Their brains are small compared with modern human brains, but they walk upright often enough that their hands are free. That simple fact is almost impossible to overstate. Free hands can carry food. Free hands can hold a child. Free hands can pick up a stone and keep it for later. Free hands can experiment. And experiment they did. Perhaps one found a naturally broken rock with a sharp edge. Perhaps another watched a bone crack under a falling stone. Perhaps hunger made the connection sharper than curiosity alone could have made it. However it happened, at some point, a mind joined two facts together. Stone can break. Broken stone can cut. That may sound small. It was not small. To make even a crude tool, the maker must see beyond the object as it is. A stone is no longer only a stone. It contains an edge that does not yet exist. The toolmaker must bring that hidden edge out by striking, turning, judging, failing, and trying again. This is imagination at its most practical. Not fantasy, not poetry, not a painted cave wall yet. That comes much later. This is imagination with hunger behind it. If I strike here, something useful may appear. The earliest tools were rough. Large cores, heavy flakes, edges that would look clumsy beside later blades. but clumsy can still be revolutionary. A rough edge can open hide. A heavy stone can break bone. A flake can scrape meat from a carcass faster than fingers and teeth alone. Now let the scene move to a kill site after the large predators have gone. The smell is strong. Heat presses down. Flies gather. The grass around the carcass is flattened. Perhaps lions fed first. Perhaps hyenas have already tugged at the remains. The safe thing would be to leave quickly. But inside the bones, there is marrow. Under the hide, there is meat. In a hard world, calories are not politely ignored. One of the toolmakers crouches. The stone edge touches hide. The first cut is not smooth. The hand slips. The body flinches. The group watches the grass. Everyone knows the predators may return. The air is thick with risk. But the edge works. Slowly, badly, wonderfully, it opens what was closed. There is food where there had been barrier. A new kind of access has entered the world. This is one reason stone tools changed everything. They did not make our ancestors stronger than lions. They did not give them claws or fangs. They did something more subtle. They let a vulnerable creature borrow sharpness from the earth. Borrowed sharpness. That is a good phrase for the early Stone Age. A body without claws can carry a flake. A jaw that cannot break thick bone can use a hammerstone. A small group surrounded by stronger animals can survive by planning, remembering, and sharing. The Oldowan tool tradition, appearing around 2.6 million years ago, shows this pattern growing clearer. The tools were made again and again across long stretches of time and wide landscapes. That means the technique was not a one-time accident. It was culture. Simple, yes, but simple the way a heartbeat is simple. Repeated. Necessary. Life-sustaining. Imagine an older toolmaker teaching a younger one. The older hand chooses a core of the right stone. Not that one. Perhaps this one. The younger watches the weight being tested. Watches the turning. Watches the striking angle. The hammerstone lifts. A pause. Then the blow. A flake comes free. The younger reaches for it. A warning sound. A quick gesture. The flake is sharp. There may have been language, or something before language. A pattern of calls, gestures, expression, shared attention. We cannot know the exact sounds. Speech leaves no fossil, but teaching leaves traces in consistency. When the same technique appears again and again, over vast time, someone was learning from someone else. That is deeply moving. Before writing, before schools, before names for subjects, before anyone complained about homework, there was a lesson beside stone. Watch. 3. No. Not that way. Again. Humanity has always been built on again. The child strikes badly at first. The core slips. A useless chip breaks away. Perhaps the older one takes it back, turns it, shows the angle again. The lesson is slow. The daylight changes. Insects hum. Somewhere nearby. Another member of the group watches the open ground. Survival and education are happening at the same time. And the lesson is not only about tools. It is about patience, attention, frustration, correction, the strange trust between one who knows and one who needs to know. It was about passing the future through the hands. When those tools allowed better access to meat and marrow, they also changed social life. Meat is often more than one individual can eat at once. It invites sharing, guarding, carrying, perhaps even rules. Who gets the richest pieces? Who feeds the young? Who helps the injured? Who remembers where the carcass was found? Food becomes a center around which relationships tighten. There is darkness here too. A carcass is a dangerous place. Predators do not give up ownership politely. Scavengers compete. A group that lingers too long may become prey. Early humans had to work quickly, and quick work requires coordination. One cuts, one watches, one carries, one listens. The group becomes a web of attention. This web may be one of the oldest homes of humanity. Not a house, not a cave, not a village, a ring of bodies watching for each other. Across time, tools encouraged brains that could remember better, plan farther, learn faster, and read the intentions of others. A good stone edge helped feed a growing brain. A growing brain made better use of stone. The loop was slow, but relentless. Climate kept pressing. Hunger kept pressing. Predators kept pressing. And under that pressure, our ancestors became more flexible. The landscape itself demanded flexibility. The Great Rift Valley in East Africa gave early humans a world of variety. Lakes, rivers, woodlands, grasslands, volcanic stone, open plains, seasonal abundance, sudden scarcity. A creature living there could not rely on one food, one shelter, one habit. It had to shift. It had to notice. Notice the fruiting tree. Notice the tracks near water. Notice the good stone. Notice the shadow in the grass. Notice who in the group has learned a skill worth copying. Over long ages, noticing became survival, and survival became intelligence. There is a temptation to imagine early humans as somehow dim because their tools look simple. But simple tools do not mean simple minds. A stone flake does not show the whole world around it. It does not show the fear of making it near predators. It does not show the memory of where the best stone lies. It does not show the teaching gestures, the failed attempts, the sharing afterward, the child watching with wide eyes. Archaeology gives us objects. We must imagine the breath around them. The Oldowan world lasted for an immense span, more than 1 million years, in some form. Think of that. A technology stable enough to carry populations through changing climates, predators, hunger, births, deaths, migration, and seasons beyond counting. Modern people sometimes mistake fast change for success. But deep time teaches another lesson. Sometimes success is a thing that works so well it does not need to hurry. A sharp flake, a heavy core, a memory, a group. For a long while, that was enough. Then, slowly, another kind of human began to appear on the African savanna. Taller, longer-legged, built for distance, less bound to trees, more at home in open country. A body made not for a quick scramble into branches, but for walking, and walking again across heat, dusht, and horizon. Homo erectus. The name means upright human, though of course many earlier relatives walked upright too. But Homo erectus carried uprightness into a new way of living. Their bodies were lean and efficient. Their legs could cover ground. Their brains were larger than those of earlier toolmakers. They could range farther, follow animals, explore new landscapes, and perhaps hold more complex plans in mind. With them comes one of the great shapes of the Stone Age, the Akoyan hand axe. If the earliest tools look like beginnings, the Acheulean hand axe looks like intention made visible. Teardrop-shaped, worked on both sides, balanced in the hand, sharp around the edges, strong enough for butchery, digging, that scraping, cutting. It is stone, yes, but stone disciplined into form. Hold one in imagination. It rests against the palm with surprising rightness. The point faces forward. The rounded end sits near the base of the hand. Its edges are not accidental. Flake scars cover its surface like frozen decisions. Blow after blow, angle after angle, the maker shaped not just an edge, but a design. That design lasted for more than 1,000,000 years. 1,000,000 years of hands making the same basic form. 1,000,000 years of teaching. 1,000,000 years of use beside rivers, under trees, near carcasses, around fires. That kind of endurance is not failure. It is proof that the tool answered the world well. Homo erectus also did something no earlier human had done on such a scale. They left Africa, not as one dramatic march with a leader pointing toward the horizon. Nothing so neat. More likely, it happened slowly. One group follows game a little farther. Their children grow up there. Another generation moves again. Water, food, season, curiosity, pressure, and chance pull them outward. Step by step, century by century, the range expands into the Middle East, into Asia, into Europe, eventually as far as China and Indonesia. The world grew larger because humans kept walking. But walking into new lands is not simple. New animals, new plants, new winters, new diseases, new stones that fracture differently, new dangers in the dark. A tropical African body entering colder regions needed more than courage. It needed technology, shelter, cooperation, and eventually, above all, fire. Fire is where night changes. Before controlled fire, darkness belonged mostly to predators. The sun fell, and the world narrowed. Eyes watched from grass. Teeth moved without sound. A small primate body, even a clever one, was vulnerable. But a fire makes a boundary. It says, here is light. Here is heat. Here is a circle the night hesitates to cross. The earliest evidence for controlled fire is debated in some places, and that uncertainty is important. Ash is fragile. Natural fires can confuse the record. Million-year-old traces do not always answer cleanly. But by hundreds of thousands of years ago, fire use becomes clearer in several sites, and its effects are impossible to overstate. Fire warmed cold bodies. Fire kept predators away. Fire extended the day. Fire cooked food. Cooking softened roots, loosened meat, made calories easier to absorb, and may have helped support the energetic demands of growing brains. The body no longer had to fight raw food so hard. Heat did some of the work before the food entered the mouth. But fire did something else, quieter, and perhaps just as important. It gathered people. Imagine evening with Homo erectus. The sun has gone low. A group settles near a sheltered place. Someone feeds the fire with selected wood. Someone cuts meat with a hand axe. Someone cracks a bone. Children sit too close and are pulled back. Sparks rise. Smoke moves with the wind. Beyond the firelight, the world remains dangerous, but the circle is warmer than darkness. In that circle, knowledge can travel. A hunt can be remembered. A mistake can be shown. A tool can be made while others watch. A child can hear the rhythm of sounds that may be early language, or something moving toward it. No one is writing yet. No one is painting cave lions yet. But the foundation is there. Light, food, faces, memory. A fire gives the group a center, and a center can become something like home. At some ancient site, archaeologists find signs of repeated use, places where groups returned, made tools, processed food, and kept hearths. These are not villages. Not yet. But they are more than random stops. They are points on a remembered places that mattered because people came back. Returning is a powerful act. To return, you must remember. To remember, you must map the world inside the mind. The Stone Age is often imagined as wandering, and much of it was. But even wanderers carry maps of meaning. A good water source, a safe overhang, a stone outcrop, a place where animals pass, a place where someone died, a place where the fire burned well through a hard night. The world becomes layered with memory. And then there is care. Some fossils from early human relatives show individuals who survived serious injuries or conditions that would have made life difficult without help. A toothless elder who lived years after losing the ability to chew properly. A wounded body that healed. These traces suggest that survival was not always measured only by immediate usefulness. Someone prepared soft food. Someone waited. Someone shared. This matters. Because the Stone Age did not only make tools, it made the habits that later people would call human goodness. Care for the injured. Food for the weak. Teaching for the young, fire for the group, memory for those not yet born. Still, nothing was guaranteed. Homo erectus survived for an astonishingly long time, spreading across continents, adapting through culture more than body. When environments changed, they did not need to grow fur over thousands of generations. They could use fire, shelter, tools, group knowledge. Behavior became a kind of fast evolution. That is one of the great secrets of humanity. We learned to adapt the world around us faster than our bodies could change. But this success opened the next strange chapter. As populations spread and became separated across Africa, Europe, and Asia, they changed in different directions. Long isolation, harsh climates, different landscapes, and time did what time always does. It made branches. For most of our past, humanity was not one kind. It was many. Homo erectus and its descendants set the stage for Neanderthals, Denisovans, other human relatives, and eventually us. The planet would become crowded with different human lives, different faces around different fires, different ways of surviving with stone in the hand and night beyond the flame. And somewhere, far ahead, one branch would remain. But not yet. For now, the fire is burning. The hand axe is warm from use. The walkers have left Africa. The dark is held back by a small red circle of light. And the human story is no longer waiting in one place. The walkers carried the old fire into larger worlds. Not in a single heroic march. Not as a tribe standing at the edge of Africa with a plan for the future. Deep time does not usually move like a movie scene. It moves through hunger, weather, children, rivers, gens, and the slow courage of going a little farther than the generation before. Homo erectus spread like that. One group followed animals beyond a familiar valley. Their children grew up knowing a new ridge as home. Another group found water farther north. Another learned where stone lay, exposed after rain. Another crossed a dry corridor that only existed because climate had shifted. No one thought they were colonizing continents. They were finding food, shelter, and enough safety to see another season. Yet, when thousands of such small movements are placed beside one another, the result is astonishing. Humans left Africa. They moved into the Middle East, into Asia, into Europe, into forests, river valleys, grasslands, volcanic islands, and cold lands where a tropical ape body had no business surviving without help. But that is the secret of this whole story. By then, humans were no longer surviving only with the body nature had given them. They were surviving with tools, memory, fire, and one another. The body of Homo erectus was built for distance. Long legs, narrow hips, a frame that could walk and walk through heat and open country. The older tree-loving shapes had faded. This was a human made for ground, horizon, and endurance. If you were standing on the savannah and saw one of them moving through morning dust, you would not mistake them for a modern person, but you might feel something close to recognition. There is a certain human rhythm in long walking. A foot presses down. Dust lifts. Weight shifts. The eyes scan. The hand carries a tool. The group stretches out, then gathers again. Someone stops to listen. Someone points toward tracks. A child stumbles and is lifted. The day opens slowly around them. In their hands, often, was one of the greatest tools ever made. The Acheulean hand axe. It is easy to say the name and move on, but hold it in the mind for a moment. A stone shaped on both sides, balanced, teardrop formed, sharp along the edge, heavy enough to work, fine enough to control. It could cut meat, scrape hides, dechruets, shape wood, break bone, and do many small jobs. No archaeologist can see clearly now because wood, skin, and daily gestures vanish from the record. The tool itself remains. It rests in the earth for hundreds of thousands of years, then rises into a modern hand, and still the shape makes sense. That is the strange beauty of it. The hand axe feels designed. It feels like intention made solid. A maker had to look at a lump of stone and imagine a form hidden inside it. Blow by blow, they removed what was not needed. Each flake scar is a decision. Each edge is a memory of impact. A wrong strike could ruin the piece. A right strike made the tool more alive. The design lasted for more than 1,000,000 years. Think about that softly. More than 1,000,000 years of hands making the same basic form. Children learning from elders. Elders correcting the angle. Camps rising and fading. Animals changing. Rivers shifting. Ice advancing and retreating. Still, the hand axe remained. Modern people often worship novelty. We see change as proof of genius. But the hand axe teaches a different lesson. Sometimes genius is a shape so useful that it can pass through ages without needing to become fashionable. Homo erectus carried such tools across the world. They were generalists. That word sounds dull, but in prehistory, it is almost magical. A specialist survives in one narrow kind of world. A generalist survives when the world changes. Homo erectus could hunt, scavenge, gather, butcher, travel, make tools, learn new landscapes, and use culture as a shield against environments their bodies had not evolved for. Culture was becoming fast adaptation. A cold night did not require fur if you could make fire and shelter. A tough hide did not require claws if you had a stone edge. A dangerous landscape did not require being the strongest animal if you had group memory and coordination. The earth was still cruel. Do not mistake success for ease. A new land means new dangers, new predators, new plants that might feed or poison, new water that might dry too soon, new stone that breaks differently, new winters that do not care what kind of body you inherited from the warm places of Africa. And then comes fire. Fire is the moment night becomes negotiable. Before fire, darkness belonged to other creatures. Lions, hyenas, leopards, and other hunters of the night moved with senses sharpened by hunger. A small human group without flame would have been a soft sound in a dangerous world. They could climb, hide, huddle, wait for daylight. But they did not command the dark. Fire changed the agreement. A flame makes a boundary. It throws light across faces and stones. It fills the air with smoke. It speaks in crackles and small collapses. It warns animals that something strange has gathered here. Something hot, bright, and painful. Predators do not like fire. Their bodies know to hesitate. The earliest evidence for controlled fire is debated, and it should be. Ash is fragile. Burned bone can be difficult to interpret. Natural fires can confuse the record. Some sites suggest ancient fire use more than 1 million years ago, while clearer evidence appears later. We cannot be completely certain about every early flame. But at some point, Homo erectus and later humans learned not only to take fire, but to keep it, tend it, move it, and make it central. That was enough to transform life. Picture a rock shelter near evening. The air has cooled. The group has returned after a long day. Someone carries wood. Someone breaks branches and arranges them with practiced care. Coals from an earlier fire are protected under ash, still holding a red eye of heat. A breath. A careful feeding of dry grass. A tiny flame opens. At first, everyone watches. Even if fire has become familiar, it is never completely ordinary. It is alive in the way it eats. It bends toward wind. It changes color. It turns wood into light, heat, smoke, and ash. It can save a group or burn a shelter. It asks for respect. Meat cooks near the coals. Roots soften. Tough plant fibers loosen. Food that once demanded long chewing becomes easier. Calories become more available. The body spends less energy digesting. More energy can feed the brain, the child, the long walk tomorrow. Some researchers have argued that cooking helps support the growth of human brains, though the timing and details remain debated. It makes sense in a deep, bodily way. A large brain is expensive. It must be fed. Fire helped turn the world into food more efficiently. But fire did not only change the stomach, it changed time. The day no longer ended when the sun disappeared. The group could sit together after dark. Tools could be repaired. Food could be shared. The young could watch elders work. Warnings could be remembered. The hunt could be reenacted with hands, sounds, gestures, and perhaps early words. A failed crossing. A predator seen near water. A good stone source beyond the hill. All of it could be carried into the minds of others. Fire made evening into a classroom. And maybe, eventually, into a theater. You know that feeling when faces around a fire look older than they are. The light comes from below. Shadows move across brows and cheeks. Eyes shine. Silence becomes thick, but not empty. A person speaks, and the flame answers with little snaps. Even now, in a modern room, fire makes stories easier to believe. Imagine that feeling hundreds of thousands of years ago. A child sits near the edge of warmth, sleepy but trying to stay awake. An elder holds a hand axe and turns it in the red light, showing the scars on the stone. Another person touches a healed injury on the arm and makes a sound that may mean, "Do not get too close to the animal." Someone else laughs, low and tired, because fear is easier to carry when a group carries it together. This is not yet the painted cave world. It is older, rougher, less visible in the archaeological record. But it matters. The mind of humanity is gathering around flame. Homo erectus sites show signs of repeated use in some places: tool-making areas, butchery, hearths, and patterns that suggest groups returning to the same safe points in the landscape. These were not villages. They were not permanent homes in the later sense, but they were remembered places. A remembered place is the beginning of belonging. The group knows where the water lies after dry months. They know which stones fracture well. They know where animals pass. They know the shelter where wind does not bite so hard. They know where an old fire once burned. The landscape becomes a map of experience, and that map is carried inside the group. Fire also made care easier. There are fossils of early humans who survived injuries or conditions that would likely have required help. A toothless elder who lived long after losing the ability to chew properly. Bodies with healed fractures. Individuals who endured what would have been fatal without food prepared by others. Protection and patience. This is where the Stone Age becomes unexpectedly soft. The world was hard. Yes. It was full of hunger, cold, predators, infection, and loss. But inside that hard world, people cared. Not always perfectly, not like saints in a painting, but enough. Enough to feed someone who could not chew. Enough to wait for someone injured. Enough to carry knowledge through the weak as well as the strong. That is human. Not metal. Not cities. Not writing. Kare? By surviving through culture, Homo erectus discovered a pattern that would define all later humanity. When the world changes, do not wait for the body to evolve. Change behavior. Make a tool. Keep a flame. Teach the child. Share the meat. Return to the shelter. Remember the season. This is why Homo erectus lasted so long. Nearly 2 million years in some regions, with great variation and debate in the details, but still an astonishing duration. Species often come and go much faster than that. Homo erectus endured because it had become flexible. It could live in many worlds without becoming a new body for each one. And yet time never stops working. As Homo erectus populations spread and became separated, the human family began to branch. Africa, Europe, and Asia became great slow laboratories of difference. Climate pressed one group this way, another group that way. Isolation deepened. Bodies changed. Faces changed. Tools changed. Traditions formed. Far in the future, some populations would become Neanderthals. Others would become Denisovans. Others would remain mysterious, known only through fragments, trace, or hints in living DNA. Homo sapiens would arise later in Africa, not as the first human, but as one late branch in a much older forest. That is important. We were not alone at the beginning of our story. For most of prehistory, humanity was plural. Many kinds of human faces looked into firelight. Many kinds of hands shaped stone. Many kinds of voices, now lost beyond recovery, called to children in the dark. The walkers leaving Africa had opened the world. Fire had made the night livable. Stone had become skill. Care had entered the record. And ahead, in the cold and shadowed lands, our lost cousins were waiting. For most of the time humans have existed, the word human did not mean only us. That is one of the strangest truths in all of prehistory. Today, we look around and see only Homo sapiens, one human species, one surviving branch, different languages, faces, customs, and histories. Yes, but still one kind of human. It feels normal because it is all we have known. But in deep time, this is not normal at all. The old world was crowded with humanity. Not crowded in the modern way, not with cities glowing at night and roads crossing continents, but crowded in the biological sense. Many kinds of humans lived on the earth at the same time. They made tools. They used fire. They hunted, gathered, taught children, cared for the injured, buried the dead, and watched the seasons turn. They were not failed drafts waiting for us to arrive. They were people of their own worlds. The most famous of them were the Neanderthals. Let us meet them gently, because they have been insulted for a long time. For more than a century, popular imagination painted them as brutish, slow, heavy creatures, somewhere between ape and man, a kind of rough mistake in the human story. That picture was wrong. It was shaped by old prejudices, bad assumptions, and the human habit of making ourselves look better by making others look worse. The real Neanderthals were formidable. They evolved in Europe and Western Asia from earlier human populations, adapting to cold, difficult landscapes over hundreds of thousands of years. Their bodies were strong, compact, and deeply suited to Ice Age conditions. Broad chests, powerful limbs, heavy bones, faces shaped by cold air and ancient inheritance. Their brains were large, in some measures even larger on average than ours, though brain size alone does not tell the whole story. Imagine a Neanderthal group at the mouth of a cave in winter. The sky is pale. Snow lies in patches beyond the entrance. The air smells of smoke, hide, damp stone, and animal fat. A fire burns low near the back. Tools lie where hands can reach them. Children sit close to warmth. Someone scrapes a hide. Someone sharpens a stone point. Someone watches the slope below for movement. These are not beasts. These are cold-weather humans. Their tools were sophisticated. One major tradition is called Mousterian, often associated with a method known as Levallois preparation. The name may sound dry, like something trapped in a classroom, but the skill itself is beautiful. A toolmaker prepared a stone core carefully, shaping it so that one final strike would detach a flake already close to the desired form. That requires imagination. You must see the finished tool inside the stone before it exists. You must understand how force will travel through the core, You must prepare the surface with patience. Then you strike once, and if your mind, hand, stone, and angle agree, the flake comes away like a decision fulfilled. Modern people can spend years learning to do this well. Neanderthals taught it to children. They also made compound tools. Stone points hafted to wooden shafts. Scrapers shaped for hides. Blades and flakes with specific purposes. Some evidence suggests they made birch bark tar, an adhesive that requires controlled heating in low oxygen conditions. That is not simple fire use. That is careful fire chemistry, whether or not they would have described it that way. Honestly, I love that detail. It gives us a Neanderthal crouched near heat, managing bark, temperature, smoke, and timing, not as a savage waving a club, but as a craftsperson solving a difficult material problem. They hunted large animals in brutal conditions. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, bison, deer, horses. They often hunted at close range, using thrusting spears rather than safe, distant weapons. Their bones show the cost. Healed fractures, heavy stress injuries, damage patterns sometimes compared to those seen in people who work with large, dangerous animals today. They got close to prey that could crush them. And yet, many survived those injuries. A healed fracture means time passed after the wound. Time in which someone protected the injured person, fed them, waited for them, helped them move. In a world where food was never guaranteed, that kind of care matters. It means the group valued more than immediate usefulness. Here again, the Stone Age becomes softer than its reputation. Hard lives do not prevent tenderness. Sometimes they make tenderness necessary. Neanderthals also show signs of symbolic life. The evidence is debated in places, and it is right to be careful. But there are pierced shells, pigment, possible body ornaments, and sites that suggest a concern with meaning beyond survival. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, Neanderthal burials became famous, especially the debated suggestion that flowers were placed with the dead. The flower interpretation remains uncertain, but deliberate burial itself is powerful enough. A body placed in earth is not just disposal. It is attention. It says, "This life mattered." Or perhaps, "This death is dangerous." Or, "Remember." Or, "Return." We do not know the exact belief. We only know that hands took time with the dead. Picture such a burial in low cave light. No grand ceremony that we can prove. No words that survive. Only a body arranged carefully. Stone around it. Earth moved. The living close by. Quiet. The fire dim. Breath visible in cold air. Someone perhaps holding a tool that belonged to the dead. Someone else watching the entrance. Because grief does not stop predators from existing. That is an ancient human scene. Not modern, but recognizable. While Neanderthals lived across Europe and Western Asia, another human group moved through the vastness of Asia, far more mysterious to us. The Denisovans. For them, the story begins almost impossibly small. A finger bone, a few teeth, a cave in Siberia, Denisova Cave. From that tiny fragment, scientists extracted DNA, and the DNA revealed a human lineage no one had fully known before. It is hard not to feel a little awe at that. A lost human species, hidden not in a complete skeleton, not in a painted wall, not in a city ruin, but in genetic traces. A small bone carrying a vanished people, the body almost gone, the code still speaking. The Denisovans were related to Neanderthals, but distinct. Their physical appearance is still partly mysterious because we have so few fossils. Yet their genetic legacy is widespread. Some living people in Asia, Melanesia, Australia, and especially certain high-altitude populations carry Denisovan ancestry. Modern Tibetans, for example, have a Denisovan-derived gene variant that helps with life in thin mountain air. Think about what that means. A human group we barely know, whose faces are mostly lost to us, still helps living people breathe on the roof of the world. That is not extinction in the simplest sense. That is survival in another body. Denisovan ancestry also appears in populations far from Siberia, suggesting that these humans were not a tiny, isolated curiosity. They were widespread, diverse, adapted to different environments, and important enough that their genes entered the ancestors of living people more than once. The old human world becomes wider every time we look. Neanderthals in the cold West, Denisovans across the enormous East, Homo sapiens emerging in Africa. Other human forms too, strange and beautiful in their own way. Homo floresiensis, the small island humans of Flores, sometimes called hobbits, with small bodies and surprisingly capable tools. Homo naledi in South Africa, with a puzzling mix of features and possible behavior toward the dead. Homo luzonensis in the Philippines, known from fragments. Another reminder that the human tree had branches we are still discovering. The planet was not waiting for us alone. It was alive with cousins, and these cousins met. That is where the story becomes intimate. Genetics shows that modern humans interbred with Neanderthals. Many people outside Africa today carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. It also shows interbreeding with Denisovans in several populations. These were not distant shadows who never crossed paths. They encountered one another, sometimes perhaps violently, sometimes cautiously, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes closely enough to have children. At Denisova Cave, scientists identified a remarkable individual, a girl whose mother was Neanderthal and whose father was Denisovan, a child of two human worlds. We know almost nothing about her life, yet the fact of her existence is enough to change the imagination. She was not a symbol to herself. She was a child. Maybe she knew the sound of voices from both sides of her family. Maybe she sat near a fire while older people worked stone. Maybe no one thought of her as hybrid, because communities do not always use the categories scientists use later. Maybe she belonged easily. Maybe she did not. We cannot know. But she lived, and a fragment of her remained long enough for us to learn that different human species met not only as rivals, but as kin. That makes the disappearance of the others more haunting. Between around 40,000 and 30,000 years ago, in many regions, the other human species faded. Neanderthals disappeared. Denisovans vanished as distinct populations. The small island humans were gone. Other branches went quiet. The reasons are debated, and no honest account should pretend certainty. Climate change likely mattered. Ice age conditions shifted. Habitats changed. Resources became harder to predict. Competition with Homo sapiens may have mattered through direct conflict, better networks, larger populations, or more flexible tools. Disease may have played a role. Interbreeding may have absorbed some groups. Different regions likely had different causes. There was no single thunderclap, just many fires going out. Imagine the last Neanderthal hearth, not because we know where it was. We do not. But imagine it anyway, gently. A cave mouth, a small flame, tools nearby, a hide drying on stone, a person looking out over a cold valley at dusk. They do not know they are the last. No one ever does. Extinction is usually understood only by those who come after. The fire burns low. The wind moves. A human branch ends. But not completely. Their genes remain in us. Neanderthal genes influence immune responses, skin, hair, metabolism, and other traits. Denisovan genes help some people survive high altitudes and may contribute to immune adaptations. We are not pure in the clean, simple way old stories sometimes want us to be. We are inheritances braided together. Homo sapiens became the last human species standing, but we did not walk away untouched. We carry the lost family inside us. That is both triumph and sorrow. Triumph, because survival continued. Sorrow, because the earth lost other ways of being human. Other faces around firelight, other songs, if they sang, other jokes, if they joked, other names for snow, stone, hunger, birth, grief, and night. We gained their genes, but we lost their voices. And now, in the deep quiet of this story, those voices are mostly beyond reach. Only the bones remain. Only the stones. Only the traces in blood. Only a finger bone in a Siberian cave. A burial in earth. A hand-shaped tool. A fragment of DNA. A healed fracture saying someone cared long enough for another human to live. The Stone Age was not a lonely road from ape to us. It was a forest of human lives. Branches crossing, touching, breaking, growing together in places, dying back in others. And at the end of that forest, one branch remains above ground. Urs. But the roots are shared. The firelight moves over many faces before it reaches us. The firelight moves over many faces before it reaches us. And then the world grows colder. Not suddenly. The earth does not always change like a door closing. Sometimes it changes like a breath drawn over thousands of years. A little colder. A little drier. A glacier pushing farther south. A river shifting. A herd moving somewhere it did not move before. A valley that once held grass becoming white for longer each season. This was the Pleistocene world, the long age of ice. For more than 2 million years, the planet moved through cycles of cold and warmth, glaciers advancing and retreating like the slow breathing of something enormous in sleep. To us, a winter can feel long after only a few months. To our ancestors, cold could become the shape of an entire world. Ice sheets grew across continents. Sea levels fell as water locked itself into frozen mass. Land bridges appeared where sea had been. Deserts expanded. Rain became uncertain. Old routes vanished, and new ones opened under a pale sky. The Stone Age was not lived on a stable earth. It was lived on a restless one. Imagine standing on an ice age plain at dawn. The light is thin. The air bites the inside of the nose. Breath leaves the mouth as a white cloud, then disappears. The ground is hard underfoot. Low grasses bend beneath frost. Far away, dark shapes move slowly across the horizon. Mammoths. Huge, woolly, patient, carrying winter on their backs. They were not the only giants. There were woolly rhinoceroses, cave bears, giant deer, massive bison, saber-toothed cats in some regions, and in other lands. Great ground sloths and armored beasts that look almost imaginary to the modern mind. The Stone Age was not empty wilderness. It was a world of bodies larger than fear could easily measure. And humans hunted some of them. That sentence sounds simple until you picture it properly. A human body, small, cold, hungry, wrapped in hide, holding a spear tipped with stone. Ahead of that human, a mammoth weighing many tons, with tusks longer than a doorway, thick hide, heavy muscle, and the power to end a life by turning the wrong way at the wrong moment. This was not courage in the shiny way people speak of courage now. This was planning because hunger gave no choice. No one brought down such animals by simple bravery. Bravery alone would have left bones in the snow. The hunt required memory, patience, observation, and a group moving as one mind. The hunters watched migration routes. They studied where herds crossed valleys, where soft ground might slow them, where cliffs or riverbanks could become traps. They understood animal behavior because misunderstanding it could mean death. For days, maybe weeks, a group might follow signs. Tracks pressed into damp earth, broken brush, dung still warm enough to speak of time, the direction of wind, the mood of birds, a distant rumble of bodies. An elder might know from years of watching that the herd would turn near a certain ridge or descend toward water when the light changed. Knowledge was a weapon before the spear ever flew. When the hunt began, everything had to happen with terrifying care. People spread out. Some drove the animals. Some waited. Some made noise. Some stayed silent. Feet slipped in mud or snow. Hands tightened on spear shafts. A wrong move could scatter the herd or bring it crashing in the wrong direction. The body must have wanted to run. The mind had to remain inside the plan. If the kill succeeded, the danger did not end. A mammoth was not only meat, it was a whole winter of labor. The carcass had to be opened, meat cut away, fat saved, bones broken, hide removed, sinew kept, tools used until edges dulled and new flakes were needed. The work would have been long, cold, bloody, exhausting, and urgent. Meat spoils. Predators come. Weather changes. A successful hunt turns a group into a workshop beneath the sky. And every part mattered. Meat fed the people. Fat gave dense energy and fuel. Hide became clothing, shelter, bedding, protection against wind. Bones became tools, frames, supports. Tusks could become structure, handless, art, memory. The animal that fed the group also helped house it. In places such as the ancient plains of what are now Ukraine and Russia, archaeologists have found the remains of mammoth bone dwellings. Try to picture one in the dark. Great bones arranged into a circular frame. Tusks curving like pale ribs against the winter sky. Hides stretched over the structure. Gaps packed with moss, earth, and snow. A hearth at the center. Smoke finding its way upward. People close together, not because comfort was abundant, but because warmth is made by bodies as well as flame. Outside, the wind moves over open land. Inside, a child sleeps under hide. The old bones of a giant hold back the night. There is something almost sacred in that, though not soft. The prey becomes shelter. Death becomes a wall against cold. Survival turns everything useful. Because waste is a luxury the Ice Age does not understand. Caves served the same need in regions where stone opened into darkness. But caves were not simply free houses waiting politely for humans. Cave bears used them too. So did other animals. The best shelter was contested. A cave entrance might mean safety, or it might mean meeting something large, hungry, and very unhappy about sharing. Still, caves offered protection from wind, snow, and predators. A group inside a cave could keep a hearth alive. Dry hides, repair tools, care for children, and wait through weather that would kill anyone caught outside. The walls held smoke. The floor held old bones. The darkness behind the fire may have felt like another world watching. Clothing was just as important as shelter. Humans are tropical animals at heart. Our skin, our sweating bodies, our lack of thick fur, all of it speaks of warmer origins. But in Ice Age, Europe, or Northern Asia, an unprotected human body would not last long. So our ancestors made a second skin. Hide had to be scraped clean, fat removed, flesh worked away, the material stretched, smoked, softened, and shaped. This was slow work, repetitive work, the kind that fills many hours and leaves hands aching. A hide is heavy when wet. It resists. It smells strongly. It does not become clothing because someone casually drapes it over the shoulders and hopes for the best. Real cold demands fitted garments, lie coverings, tunics, hoods, boots, mittens, seams that keep out wind, layers that trap warm air, fastenings that allow movement. Eventually, bone and ivory needles appear, fine tools with eyes for thread made from sinew or plant fiber. A tiny needle may seem humble beside a mammoth hunt, but it may have saved just as many lives. A spear feeds a body. A needle keeps it from freezing. This is why the Stone Age should never be called simple. It was a world of constant skill. Every object carried knowledge. A boot was climate science in hide form. A shelter was engineering. A hunting plan was ecology. A fire was chemistry and comfort. A berry known to be safe was medicine and memory. A story about a poisonous plant could be the difference between a child living and dying. Daily life was not all hunting giants. That is another mistake the imagination makes. Bones preserve better than berries, so the record can make hunters seem like the whole story. But much of survival came from gathering, digging, collecting, processing, remembering. Roots, notes, seeds, shellfish, eggs, mushrooms, insects, small animals, seasonal plants. All of it mattered. A skilled gatherer carried a map no one could see, where the edible roots lay after rain, which berries ripened first, which leaves soothed pain, which mushrooms must be avoided, which bark could be chewed, which place still held water when others dried. This knowledge was not decorative. It was life itself. Children learned by watching. A small child follows an older woman or man through brush, stepping where they step. A hand reaches toward a bright berry, then is gently stopped. Not that one. This one. Perhaps the lesson comes with a sound, a warning, a story. Maybe a tale of someone who ate the wrong thing long ago. Maybe the tale grew in the telling until the plant became almost a spirit of danger. That is how knowledge becomes memorable. That is why stories matter. The Stone Age mind did not separate survival and storytelling the way we sometimes do. A story could carry a map. A story could preserve a warning. A story could make a child remember. The risks were everywhere. Infant mortality was high. Injuries that seem small today could become deadly. A cut could infect. A tooth could abscess. Childbirth could become a crisis. A winter with poor stores could thin a group to silence. Predators watched. Weather turned. A person who lived into older age carried not only years, but luck, kare, and an astonishing amount of remembered knowledge. And care appears again. The archaeological record gives us bones that healed. People who survived injuries long after they should have died without help. Neanderthals and other ancient humans with damaged bodies who lived on because someone fed them, protected them, and kept them near the fire. Evidence from tooth calculus suggests some used plants with medicinal properties, even when those plants offered little food value. This is not the fantasy of a brutal world where only the strong mattered. The strong mattered, of course. Strength could pull a carcass, throw a spear, carry wood, walk through snow. But the old, the injured, and the slow also mattered, because they held memory. They watched children. They knew seasons. They knew where a group had survived before. They knew which mistakes not to repeat. An elder by the fire may have been as valuable as a hunter on the plain. Imagine such an elder on a winter night. The face lined by smoke and cold, hands curled near flame. A child leaning close. Outside, wind presses against hide walls. The elder speaks softly, perhaps of a hunt from long ago, perhaps of a winter when the herd failed to come, perhaps of a cave where bears slept. The child listens, half afraid, half comforted. The story enters memory before the lesson is needed. Years later, when the child is grown and the snow returns, the story may save them. This is how humans survived the Ice Age. Not by being the strongest animal, not by being untouched by fear. They survived by turning fear into knowledge, knowledge into tools, tools into culture, and culture into something warm enough to gather around. The giants walked the plains. The glaciers breathed. The world changed again and again. And in the middle of all that cold, humans kept small fires alive, fed one another, mended hides, shaped stone, watched the sky, and taught the young what the dead had learned. After so many thousands of generations spent surviving the cold, the human mind began leaving marks that were not only useful. That is a quiet way to say something enormous. For millions of years, stone tools had carried thought in practical form. A flake meant cutting. A hand axe meant butchery, digging, scraping, work. A needle meant clothing. A spear point meant meat, risk, and winter survival. These objects were intelligent, but their intelligence was tied closely to need. Then, slowly, another kind of object appears. A marked stone, a drilled shell, a bead, a painted hand, a line that does not cut meat, does not scrape hide, does not open bone, and yet somehow matters. This is one of the deepest mysteries of the Stone Age. At some point, humans began making meaning visible. Not only tools, symbols. The first signs are quiet. They do not arrive as a cathedral or a book. They appear as small gestures in ochre, shell, bone, and stone. In southern Africa, at Blombo's cave, pieces of red ochre were engraved with geometric patterns tens of thousands of years ago. Cross-hatched lines, repeated marks, shapes that do not seem to be accidental. The exact meaning is lost, and we should be careful. We cannot climb inside the mind of the person who made them. But the act itself is powerful. Someone marked a pattern into color. Someone made a thing that meant something beyond its material. Red ochre itself is a beautiful substance. Earthy, rich, staining the fingers. Grind it, and it becomes powder. Mix it, and it can become paint. Rub it on skin, and the body changes in the eyes of others. It may have been used for decoration, ritual, identity, protection, or purposes we cannot recover. Some scholars argue that early ochre use may be practical in places, perhaps for hide treatment or insect protection. Others see symbolic behavior. Often, the truth may not sit in only one basket. In the Stone Age, useful and sacred may have touched. A color can protect skin and also mark belonging. A bead can decorate and also speak. Shell beads appear at ancient sites, sometimes far from the coast, carefully selected, drilled, strewn, worn. A shell necklace does not help you outrun a predator. It does not keep snow from your hands. It does something more subtle. It tells others something about who you are. I belong here. I am of this group. I have status. I remember someone. I am beautiful. Perhaps all of those at once. Identity had become something that could be carried on the body. Pause with that for a moment. A person in a cold, dangerous. The ancient world takes time to make a bead. The shell is small. The hole must be made carefully. The cord must be prepared. The object is worn not because it feeds the stomach, but because humans are not only stomachs. They are eyes, hearts, memories, longings, and social creatures who need to be seen. The Stone Age had begun to dress the self. Then, around the later Paleolithic, the signs of symbolic life become overwhelming. Humans go into caves. Not just the bright entrances where a group might live. They go deep, into chambers where daylight cannot reach, through narrow passages, over damp stone, under low ceilings, carrying lamps filled with animal fat, carrying pigment, carrying tools, carrying intention. Imagine entering such a cave. The outside world falls away behind you. The air cools. Sound changes. Footsteps become soft and hollow. Water drops somewhere in the dark. The flame in your lamp trembles. Its light is not steady like a modern bulb. It breathes. It leans. It makes the wall move. Then the animals appear. Horses, lions, rhinoceroses, bison, deer, bulls, mammoths, creatures painted in charcoal, ochre, and mineral color, their bodies following the curves of stone. A bulge in the wall becomes a shoulder. A crack becomes the line of a back. A shadow becomes motion. In firelight, the painted animal seems almost alive, stepping in and out of the rock. The great caves of Europe, such as Chauvet, Lascaux, and Altamira, are not crude beginnings. They are astonishing. The animals are drawn with confidence, shading, movement, and anatomical understanding. Whoever painted them watched living animals with extraordinary attention. They knew how a horse carries its head, how a bison turns, how a lion stalks, how a rhinoceros seems to push its whole weight forward. These were not simple decorations. They were encounters. Why did they do it? That question still waits in the cave. Some scholars have suggested hunting magic, The idea that painting an animal gave power over it, or helped prepare for the hunt. Others see shamanic visions, altered states, journeys into a spirit world beneath the earth. Some think the paintings taught younger members of the group about animals, seasons, danger, and identity. Some see sacred stories, ancestors, rituals, or places of gathering that lasted through generations. We cannot be sure. The artists left the images, not the explanation. That is part of the hush. They were like us in body and brain. They saw, feared, loved, remembered, and imagined. Yet the exact meaning of their art remains beyond us, just out of reach, like a painted horse disappearing into stone. There are handprints, too. Those may be the most intimate. A hand placed against the cave wall, pigment blown around it, the hand removed. A pale shape remains, outlined by color. A person saying, without words, "I was here." Or perhaps, this hand belongs to the ritual. Or this hand speaks to the animal. Or this hand crosses between worlds. Whatever the meaning, the effect after thousands of years is almost unbearably human. You see the hand, and the distance collapses. Not completely, never completely, but enough. A hand like yours, fingers spread, palm against stone, breath pushing pigment into darkness. Then the person leaves, and the hand remains longer than any name. Portable art appears too. Small, carved animals. Figures shaped from bone, ivory, stone, or clay. Some are graceful. Some are strange. Some female figures, often called Venus figurines, have been interpreted in many ways. Fertility symbols, self-images, ritual objects, teaching forms, or something else entirely. We should not pretend to know too much. But we can say this. Humans were making bodies into symbols. They were shaping not only tools, but meanings. Music also enters the story. Bone flutes from the Upper Paleolithic show that humans made instruments from bird bones or ivory. Imagine the first notes in a cave or around a fire. Thin, breath made into sound. A melody moving where words could not. Rhythm from hands on hide or stone. A group listening. A child smiling. Someone grieving. Someone dancing. Music is invisible archaeology most of the time. It disappears as soon as it is played, unless an instrument survives. But if flutes survive, then songs existed. And if songs existed, then Stone Age nights were not only filled with hunger and fear, they also held beauty. This matters, because the old stereotype of prehistoric life as mere brutality cannot survive the cave wall, the bead, the flute, the burial. These people were not simple creatures waiting for civilization to give them meaning. They were already making meaning in darkness. They also buried the dead. Neanderthals did this in some places, and Homo sapiens did so with increasing symbolic richness. Bodies placed carefully. Grave goods sometimes included. Beads, tools, animal parts, Pigmon. A burial does not prove one exact belief, but it proves attention. The dead were not always left where they fell. They were handled, remembered, perhaps feared, perhaps loved, perhaps prepared for something imagined beyond death. Picture a burial at dusk. The ground opened by tools. The body lowered. Red ochre staining the soil or skin. Beads that once caught firelight lying still against a body that no longer warms them. The living gathered close. No written prayer. No stone temple. Only breath, grief, and a gesture repeated because it feels necessary. That is religion before doctrine. Or at least, it is the human need from which religion often grows. To face death and not let it be only disappearance. To make an act. To mark the loss. To say, this person was not nothing. The birth of symbolic thought did not make life easy. The cold remained. Predators remained. Hunger remained. Children still died. Bodies still broke. But now humans could place suffering inside story, image, song, and ritual. They could paint the animal that frightened and fed them. They could wear signs of belonging. They could give the dead a place. They could enter the dark of the earth and leave beauty on the wall. There is something soothing in that, even though it is dark. The cave is frightening. The world outside is uncertain. But the hand lifts pigment. The line curves. The animal appears. Firelight moves. For a moment, fear becomes form. That is art. Maybe that is why it began. Not because humans had spare time in some easy paradise. They did not. But because the mind needed a way to hold what the body endured. The hunt. The animal. The dead. The group. The unseen. The future. The memory of those who came before. A painted bison is not only a bison. It is attention, hunger, reverence, fear, chill, and dream pressed into stone. By the time these images spread across caves and objects, the modern human mind had fully stepped into its strange power. It could imagine what was not present. It could let one thing stand for another. It could make symbols, stories, rituals, music, identity, perhaps myths. It could carry the dead inward and speak to them through marks. The Stone Age had made the toolmaker. Now it had made the dreamer. And that dreamer was still a survivor, still cold, still hungry, still watching the herd and the sky. But inside the fire circle, something new had opened. The world was no longer only what could be eaten, hunted, worn, or feared. It could be represented, remembered, transformed. A stone could become a blade. A wall could become a herd. A handprint could become a voice across time. And somewhere in the cave darkness, by a lamp no brighter than a small trembling star, humanity began to see itself. After the cave, walls began to glow with painted animals. After hands had pressed color into stone. After songs had risen beside fires, and the dead had been placed carefully in the earth. Another revolution came quietly, It did not arrive like thunder. It arrived like a seed. A seed is almost too small for the weight of what it changed. It rests in the palm like a little sleeping thing, dry, plain, easy to ignore. But inside it, there is a future village, a storage jar, a grinding stone, a fence, a field, a hunger, un surplus, a quarrel, a feast, a child born under a roof that does not move with the seasons. The end of the Ice Age did not make the world easy, but it changed the rules. In many places, the cold loosened its grip. Glaciers withdrew. Forests returned to valleys. Rivers shifted into new courses. Herds changed their paths. Some great animals vanished. The old ways of following mammoth, reindeer, bison, and wild horse did not disappear overnight, but the balance of life began to tilt. For countless generations, humans had known plants intimately. They had watched grasses ripen. They had gathered seeds. They had dug roots. They had learned where nuts fell, where berries sweetened, where water lingered after the dry months. Farming did not begin because someone suddenly discovered that plants grew from seeds. People had known that kind of thing for a long time. In the practical way, gatherers know the living world. Farming began when attention changed into dependence. A group returns to the same patch of wild grain again and again. They notice that the best seeds fall near the place where people worked last season. They scatter some without meaning to. Latte, perhaps. They scatter some with intention. They clear competing plants. They return at the right time. They protect the place from animals. They wait. Waiting becomes part of food. That is a deep change. A hunter can follow. A gatherer can search. A farmer must trust the ground after placing life inside it. Imagine one of the earliest fields at dawn. Not a field like the great squared lands of later empires, but a rough patch near a settlement, half wild, half tended. The soil is dark from recent rain. A woman bends with a digging stick. A man cuts dry stalks with a stone sickle. Children gather fallen grains in woven baskets. Dogs move between the houses. Smoke rises from low roofs. The air smells of earth, straff, ash, and stored food. It is peaceful for a moment, but peace can be complicated. The village is warm with human life. It is also crowded compared with the old camps. More bodies, more smoke, more waste, more sickness passing from one person to another. Animals kept nearby bring milk, meat, hide, vol, labor, and disease. Grain stores mean safety, but they also mean theft. A full storage pit is comfort to the family that owns it and temptation to the hungry stranger. The beautiful trap of farming is that once a community grows around the harvest, leaving becomes harder. Fields need tending. Houses need repair. Grain needs guarding. Animals need watching. Children are born into a place rather than a route. The old wandering life does not vanish entirely, and many groups continue to hunt, gather, fish, and move for thousands of years. But in certain regions, the human foot begins to return to the same doorway night after night. Home becomes heavier. Mud brick walls rise. At first, a house is simple. Earth shaped by hand. Posts, rates, packed clay, a hearth, a sleeping space, a place to store food. But even a simple house changes the mind. A wall says, inside and outside. A doorway says, return here. A storage jar says, tomorrow belongs partly to us. A roof says, the rain may come, but we have answered it. Listen to the village in the evening. A grinding stone rasps against grain. That sound may be one of the oldest sounds of settled life. Slow, steady, tiring. Grain does not become flour by wishing. Hands push stone over stone again and again. Shoulders ache. Dust clings to fingers. The work is repetitive, and repetition becomes the rhythm of the day. Someone tends a hearth. Someone shapes clay. Someone mends a basket. Someone watches goats pushing their noses through a fence. A child cries, then is comforted. An elder speaks from a doorway, half in shadow, telling a story of a time when people followed herds farther than the young can imagine. The village remembers movement, even as it stays. Domestication is not simply humans conquering animals and plants. It is a long relationship, often slow, often accidental at first. Wild wheat becomes more suited to harvesting because humans choose seeds that do not scatter too quickly. Goats become smaller, kalmir, more manageable because humans favor certain animals over others. Dogs had already entered the human world earlier, likely as hunting companions, guards, scavengers near camp, and eventually something closer to family. Every domesticated species changes humans too. Grain makes people plan around seasons. Goats make people think in herds. Sheep bring wool. Cattle bring power and danger. Pigs turn scraps into meat. Rice binds communities to wetlands. Maize reshapes entire landscapes far away in the Americas. Beans, squash, millet, barley, lentils, and many other plants become partners in survival. Partnership is not always gentle. Farming can feed more people on less land, but it can also narrow the diet. Skeletons from some early farming populations show signs of harder labor and poorer health compared with some hunter-gatherers. Teeth suffer from grain. Bodies bend under repetitive work. Disease spreads more easily in settled communities. Life expectancy does not instantly improve. In some ways, the new life is harder. And still, villages grow. Because more food can mean more children. More children mean more workers. More workers mean larger fields. Larger fields mean deeper dependence on harvest. The circle tightens. A bad season becomes more dangerous when many mouths wait for one crop. A storage room becomes sacred in a way, not because a god stands there visibly, but because hunger is always nearby. Ritual follows food. People begin to gather in larger ways. Communal buildings appear in some places. Burial practices change. Ancestors may be kept close beneath floors or near houses. The dead become part of the settlement, not left behind on a seasonal path. Memory roots itself under the living. Picture a house where generations have slept. Beneath the floor, older bones rest. Above them, children play. The hearth smokes. Grain is ground. A grandmother tells a story. The family is no longer only moving through land. It is layered into one place. That can feel beautiful. It can also feel haunted. To stay in one place is to accumulate ghosts. As villages become larger, differences appear. Some families have more grain. Some control better land. Some own more animals. Some people become specialists. Potters, weavers, toolmakers, ritual leaders, traders, builders. The old equality of small, mobile bands, never perfect, but often limited by movement and sharing, begins to shift. Stored wealth can be counted. Counted wealth can be guarded. Guarded wealth can be inherited. And inherited wealth can divide people. The Stone Age is still here, but it is no longer only the age of small fires and moving bands. It is becoming the age of settled smoke, packed earth, boundary, surplus, and suspicion. The tools change too. Stone does not disappear. It becomes finer. Polished axes clear forests. Flint blades cut grain. Grinding stones turn seeds into flour. Mortars, pestles, scrapers, awls, needles, and sickles fill the daily world. Pottery appears in many regions, allowing storage, cooking, carrying, and ritual. Clay, once only earth underfoot, becomes vessel, wall, oven, figurine, and memory. A potter sits near a low fire, hands wet, clay turning, the surface smoothed by a thumb. The vessel is simple, but it changes a household. It can hold grain. It can hold water. It can hold stew. It can hold the future for a little while. When fired, it becomes harder than the hand that shaped it. When broken, its fragments may wait thousands of years for someone to read the pattern of a vanished meal. The village has its own music. Not only flutes and chants, though those may continue. There is also the music of labor. Grinding, weaving, hooves in a pen, dogs barking at dusk, water poured into jars, seeds rattling in baskets, rain on thatch, a baby breathing near the hearth. These are gentle sounds, but they belong to a world that has become more crowded, more fixed, and more vulnerable to its own success. A harvest can fail. A neighbor can raid. A sickness can move through houses. A dispute over land can last longer than the memory of why it began. Here the darkness deepens softly. The old dangers of the wilderness do not vanish. They are joined by new dangers made by settlement itself. Property, inequality, war over stored food, disease from crowding, labor that never ends. The village protects, but it also traps. Still, humans stay. They stay because the field answers often enough, because children survive often enough, because grain in a jar is a kind of magic, because a roof in winter is hard to abandon, because ancestors rest under the floor, because the hearth has become a center. The Stone Age mind adapts again. For millions of years, humans survived by movement. Now many survive by return. Return to the field. Return to the house. Return to the herd. Return to the grinding stone at dawn. Return to the grave of the ancestor. Return to the same path between storage pit and doorway. This is not the end of wildness. Forests remain. Hunters remain. Fishers remain. Nomads remain. The world is mixed, as it usually is. But the direction in many regions is clear. More people, larger settlements, more stored food, more ritual labor, more tools, more exchange, more conflict, more memory tied to place. And beneath it all, stone is still doing the work. Stone cuts the grain. Stone grinds the flour. Stone shapes the wood. Stone clears the trees. Stone marks the grave. Stone builds the wall. The age of metal has not yet arrived, but the world is preparing for it without knowing. In hearths, kilns, in fires, people learn heat. In pottery, they learn transformation. In polished tools, they learn patience. In trade, they move rare materials over long distances. In village, they create the social pressure that will make new materials powerful. The seed has made the village. The village will make the future. And the future is beginning to glow, faintly, at the edge of the fire. Before metal changed the world, stone had already made us human. That is the truth to carry into the final quiet of this story. Copper, bronze, and iron would come later, shining in hands that had known stone for millions of years. But metal did not create the human mind from nothing. It did not teach us to plan, to carry, to remember, to paint, to bury, to farm, to listen, to gather around fire. All of that had already been shaped in the long darkness before history. Metal arrived in a world prepared by stone. Imagine a late Stone Age village in the cool hour before sunrise. The houses are still shadowed. A dog lifts its head, then lowers it again. Smoke from last night's hearth clings faintly under a roof. In one house, grain waits in a clay jar. In another, a polished axe leans near the wall. Outside, a field lies pale and damp. The people sleeping there do not think of themselves as standing at the edge of an age. People almost never know when they are living at an ending. A craftsperson wakes early. They take a stone axe and move toward water. Polishing is slow work. The tool is rubbed again and again against wet stone until its surface grows smooth, its edge strong, its form almost elegant. This is not crude survival. This is patience turned into technology. A polished axe can clear trees. shape wood, build houses, open fields, and alter landscapes. One tool in one hand can change the relation between people and forest. Stone technology had reached a high art. Flint, blades, delicate points, sickles with sharp inserts, grinding stones, needles, scrapers, beads, carvings, polished axes, ceremonial objects. The word stone can sound simple, but by this time stone had become many things. Weapon, tool, ornament, symbol, trade good. In some places, certain stones traveled far from their source, passed from group to group, carrying value across landscapes. A bead from distant stone or shell might move through hands for hundreds of miles. A fine blade might say something about skill, status, alliance, or memory. A polished object might be useful, sacred, or both. The Stone Age had never been only about survival. By its later centuries, it was about identity, wealth, beauty, ancestry, and power too. Then, somewhere in the long human experiment with fire and earth, people noticed something strange. Certain stones changed in heat. A greenish mineral in the fire. A bright bead of copper appearing from the ore. A material that did not flake like stone, but softened, melted, hardened again. At first it may have seemed like a curiosity, a rare color, a strange gift from the hearth. Native copper could be hammered into ornaments before smelting became common. It was beautiful, but soft, useful for display before it was useful for power. Still, the idea had entered the world. Stone breaks. Metal flows. That is a profound difference. A stone tool must be shaped by removing pieces. Once a flake is gone, it is gone. The maker works by subtraction. But metal can be melted, poured, hammered, reheated, reshaped. It carries a different kind of possibility. It glows. It yields. It returns from the fire changed but not destroyed. The first metal did not replace stone overnight. That is important. People did not wake one morning and throw away millions of years of tool making because copper had appeared. Stone remained cheaper, familiar, and often better for certain jobs. Flint can make a sharper edge than many early metals. Grinding stones still ground grain. Stone axes still worked. Stone arrowheads still flew. The old world continued beneath the new shine. But metal had a future hidden inside it. Copper led eventually to bronze when mixed with tin. Bronze was harder, more durable, more useful for tools and weapons. It could be cast in molds, repeated, standardized, displayed. It changed farming, craft, trade, war, status, and ritual. It required ores, fuel, specialists, exchange networks, and control. It favored societies able to organize labor and move materials over distance. The old village world began to stretch toward towns, then cities. Storage became administration. Exchange became trade. Ritual centers became temples. Leaders became chiefs. then kings. Marks on clay became writing in some places. Armies formed. Walls rose. Laws were spoken, then recorded. The thin, bright edge of history began. But history did not begin from emptiness. It began from the Stone Age. Every city was built by hands, shaped in older habits. Every scribe held a tool because earlier hands had learned to make tools. Every king ruled people who still needed grain, water, fire, shelter, memory, and story. Every bronze blade came after millions of years of stone edges. Every temple fire echoed older fires under open sky. This is why the Stone Age matters. It is not just the before. It is the foundation. Return now to the beginning of the journey. A stone in the hand. Cool. Heavy. Quiet. You turn it once, and suddenly it is not only a stone. It is Lake Turkana under ancient heat. It is a pre-human hand striking a core. It is the sharp edge opening hide. It is the Oldowan flake, the Ashoylian hand axe, the child learning the angle. It is Homo erectus walking beyond Africa. It is fire holding back the night. It is the Neanderthal toolmaker preparing a core with patience. It is the Denisovan trace in living blood. It is mammoth tracks in snow, a hide shelter in winter, a bone needle pulling sinew through skin. It is ochre on fingers, a horse on a cave wall, a handprint left in darkness. It is a seed placed into soil. It is grain ground at dawn. It is the first faint glow of metal in the hearth. All of that rests inside the stone if the imagination is quiet enough. The Stone Age was dark because the world was dangerous. Predators moved beyond firelight. Children died young. Ice advanced. Hunger returned. Injuries could become fatal. Other human branches vanished. Entire ways of being human disappeared, leaving only fragments. Hennis, bonus, and tools. But it was also luminous. Firelight on faces. A shared meal. A healed fracture. A necklace of shells. A painted bison moving in cave shadow. A child taught which berry to avoid. An elder kept alive because memory mattered. A group crossing a cold plain together. A seed saved for another season. A tool shaped for a hand not yet born. This is the deepest human inheritance. Not conquest. Continuity. The ability to endure, adapt, teach, and make meaning when the world is uncertain. We survived 3 million years without metal because we had something more important first. We had attention. We had hands. We had memory. We had cooperation. We had fire. We had stories. We had the stubborn habit of turning whatever the earth gave us into a way to continue. Stone, wood, bone, hide, flamme, song, seed. Simple materials. Unimaginable consequences. And even now, beneath every modern thing, the old Stone Age mind remains. You feel it when fire makes a room feel safe. You feel it when a story holds people together. You feel it when your hand closes around a tool. You feel it when darkness makes you listen more carefully. You feel it when you look at stars and sense, for a moment, how ancient the night really is. The metals came. The cities came. The written names came. But before all of them, someone picked up a rock and imagined an edge. That edge carried us through ice, hunger, distance, grief, and wonder. The fire beside us is low now. The old hunters have gone quiet. The cave walls are dark again. The village smoke has thinned into night. The first metal glimmer waits beyond the story, but the stone remains in your hand, patient and silent. Let it rest there. Let the long ages settle. Let the ancestors return to their fires. And you, for this little while, do not need to walk any farther. Good night.